Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 𝗵resistance Book Club, where we explore intersectional feminist literature that inspires and empowers women. We're moderators, Ellie and Abigail, and we're honored to be speaking with Katherine Elberfeld, an Episcopal priest and the author of An Umbrella Made for a Man. This novel follows the strong-willed Irene Maxwell as she navigates her struggles towards ordination as an Episcopal priest in the 1990s. Katherine, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired the creation of this novel.
I think what really triggered it for me is that I have a growing concern. I guess I've always had it, but it's really acute now, of the hold that patriarchy has, from my perspective, seems to have on cultures across the globe. And this is not about men. It's not about anti-men. It's about power and how it's amassed and controlled and abused. If we had a matriarchy that were delving into power struggles, I'd like to think I would be just as concerned. And I really had the feeling that I needed to get this written before I died, because I think that we're in trouble, and in terms of the way we're treating each other, and think it needs to be named out loud so we can deal with it. Also, at the beginning of the book, as you know, I link our behavior, or I compare our behavior, our violent behavior towards each other, with the violent behavior that chimpanzees sometimes engage in. And of course, we share 98% of DNA with our chimpanzee relatives. So, from a scientific perspective, I'm cautioned that we can't just make that direct link, but I'm exploring how hierarchical systems, male dominated systems, power systems can exist and operate across contexts. Um, and as I say, I'm so concerned about the way we're treating each other um, these days that I wanted to get this written and on the table, because my belief is if it's on the table, we can talk about it and do something about it if we choose to.
I think that that's how we're going to be able to advocate for women across the globe, and be able to uplift each other up by, like you said, naming this, having a conversation, inviting them to a place to be able to um, continue the conversation and hopefully speak to their friends and family. And
That's how it spreads. Exactly. It's not going to spread from the top down.
No.
exactly. Yeah.
I think we know that much.
hmm Got to start with us. So.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because people often say, well, what can I do? What can I do? Nothing I do makes any difference. And I disagree with that. I think each one of us can discern what it is we're led to do, and what you do, Abigail, might be different from what you do, Ellie, might be different from what I do, but it doesn't matter. As long as we're each doing what we feel that we're led to do, then all of that can come together and create quite a powerful force for good.
One of the reasons that the book club was created in the first place was from a desire to figure out how can we build a community around women and empower them and advocate them to use their voices. And just like how we're doing that in our book club, we feel like you're doing that with your book. And it's important for women to feel like, what with no matter what outlet they have, that they can find a way to do the same.
That's exactly right. Like, one of my best friends nags our people in the state house in Washington constantly, and so that's how she speaks up. So we all just have our different ways, but that doesn't matter as long as we're doing something, I think.
We agree.
Yeah, and we all have different experiences to learn and build on, and if we don't talk about it, then we can't understand each other. So,
That's a good point. Good point. Yes.
this is a work of literary fiction that provides for us an introspective residence within Irene's mind. Your use of artistic prose and nonlinear plots was unique, and it added a lot of depth that's appreciated in the physical hard copy of your book. Although I do want to give props to the narrator of the audio version, Barbara Hensley. She did an excellent job, so she was a good pick for that. But what drew you to this style of writing?
Well, some of it's not very, what should I say, not a very lofty reason. Part of it is that when I think about sitting down to write a chapter that's going to be like 20 pages long, and we're going to start on Tuesday morning, then we're going to go to Tuesday afternoon, I just lose interest. It's daunting and it's not engaging to me. So I like to employ that short narrative style, partly for self-preservation. Also, I'm very heavily influenced by 𝗕𝗫𝗄𝗏 𝗫𝗄𝗏, one of the great Southern writers of all time. And she said when you're writing, to start at point A and go to point B with a very taut line with no extraneous material. So I took that to heart when I first read it decades ago, and that's what I try to do, is just go from here to here without anything that's extra, no filler. I think that makes it more powerful. And then the other part of it is that it's very important to me to take an egalitarian stance with the reader. I am put off when authors present themselves as, that they're at the podium, they're God, and everybody else is just lucky to be in the room. I look at it as an effort that we engage in together. So by creating those open spaces, that's an opportunity for you as the reader to come inside the story and walk alongside Irene and watch her and be shoulder to shoulder with her as she goes through her different experiences. And then you can draw your own conclusions as to what she chooses to do or not do. But yeah, so it's mostly an egalitarian approach to the whole craft of writing and engaging in the reading of the story. It was interesting because I was doing these short pieces, and at the same time, my older son was in graduate school at Georgia State in creative writing, and he said, "We're studying that style of writing now, that very short, those short pieces." And he said, "We call them shorts." So I was writing shorts, but I didn't have the name for it until he told me what he was learning in school. And it's important to me that form follows function, and I think that the form of the shorts and the prose poems, the nonlinear arc, and all of that helps to support the function of the story that I was telling.
And you can really relate to Irene's emotions from that. Like, I could feel her frustrations along with her.
Good.
That it was presented. I'm like, oh, I feel it too.
Not that I want you to feel frustration, but I'm glad you could get what she was going through. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there was definitely a couple times of like, based on what was said to Irene, that my mouth was just like, and yeah, we could definitely, I definitely felt for her because especially when I'm thinking from, a religious leadership.
Yeah.
I'm like, "This was said?" But I'm like, "Oh my goodness." And that kind of brings me to our next point of, like, how much of this was, because we know that this is kind of based on your, lived experience. So how
Yeah.
much is it, your experience versus fiction?
There is nothing that happens to Irene that I did not go through. Nothing. not in her home life, not in her professional life, nothing.
Mm.
I changed the names of the perpetrators because it's not my goal to expose a particular person for behaving this way or that way. My aim is to expose the hypocrisy, the disconnect between what I believe we're taught in our faith as to how to behave toward each other, and the gap between that and what I perceived as the reality. So, but there's when you cringe with something that was done to her, said to her, you can think to yourself, okay, that was Katie sitting there having that said to her, done to her. Yeah. More's the pity, right? And that's one of the reasons I know you were wondering about the fiction versus nonfiction. That's one of the reasons that I set it in a fictional setting because, um, first of all, I didn't want to write a book that was all about me, because I think that's off-putting. To me, it is. But also, um, it's humiliating. I didn't want to say I was in a meeting and this was said to me. I went to this conference and this was said to me. It's humiliating, and I just didn't want to engage in that kind of vulnerability.
Mhm.
I don't have a problem now that it's written and people ask me. In fact, I take some weird kind of pleasure in saying, yeah, whatever happened to her happened to me, just so you know. That I didn't want to write it that way.
Like a religious leadership role is not exempt from the like good old boys club and having to be exposed to what comes with that and how to navigate that even
Yes.
as a priest.
Yes, absolutely. Not exempt at all. And I didn't get into this aspect, but there's so many subtle ways that keeps feeding itself. Like, in a profession where most of the people in the profession are male, then when they go to the bathroom, they go together. So we don't know what kinds of conversations are taking place there. Plans for this meeting, plans for this project. We don't know because we're not in the bathroom with them,
Mm.
thank God. But it keeps feeding on itself that
Yeah.
way.
Mhm.
And so the old boy network is alive and well in the clergy, big time.
So, misogyny continues to be a concern within religion.
Mm.
Women can be easily controlled, considered inferior and subservient,
Mhm.
especially in a religious religion that, from the beginning, Genesis considers women to be problematic with the story of Eve.
Mhm.
How do you process this and continue to stay close to God versus it pulling you away from religion?
That's such a great question. Yes, I mean, we at the seminary that I went to, we had no women's studies program. We were in DC, and so we were able to draw on resources from other seminaries in the area. And so I did get to take a class from a wonderful theologian, Beth Johnson, who explained to us that women have been categorized for millennia as either the whore or the Madonna, that we're not, there's nothing in between. We're either, the bad girl, Eve, or we're the impossibly good girl, Mary, but there's no real person in between. And in terms of religion and God, am a I am now allergic to organized religion. I just I can't participate in it because to me, it's so far away from Christ's teachings in terms of, again, how we're to treat each other, and how we're to comport ourselves as we go through our lives. But my faith is stronger than ever. My older son, when he was in school, when college, he was the president of the choir. And so he was in chapel all the time, all the time. And he had grown up in the Episcopal Church and all that. And one time we were together and he said, "Mom, I'm not having a crisis of faith. I'm having a crisis of church." And I just thought that was really well said, that my faith in God, it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger because I know what I believe about God and what God wants for us. And so much of what we see in real life just doesn't doesn't come close, in my opinion. Religion is, I think of dogma and I think of a performance on Sunday mornings and all the machinations that go on in the politics and, the lack of direct communication, all that stuff. And then the spirituality of my relationship with God and in communion with other people who share that faith is what makes my heart full.
As Irene was speaking, I could just feel like her heart was in the right place.
Mhm.
And she was wanting to go into it for the right reasons and to
Yeah.
help other people, which I think we've all experienced within church that like you said, some people are just doing it for show,
Mhm.
for power, for
Yeah.
clout, but the behavior is not aligned with that in everyday life.
Correct. That's a very, very good way to put it. Very good way to put it.
And I imagine from your standpoint, that it probably makes you feel like you maybe want to strongly advocate for, like, hey, there are people out there that are in these leadership roles for more of a control reason, but that I I think that it's important to know that some people are in this just because they truly want to be closer to God and lead people
Mhm.
closer
Mhm.
to God, versus joining some kind of system,
Yeah.
as a whole.
Yeah. That's a very perceptive observation. In fact, I know that you were wondering about the organization that Irene founded called Welcome, where women could come together to support each other if they were experiencing these kinds of behaviors in the workplace. And I did I didn't form that kind of organization, but after 5 years of parish ministry, um, my observation was that the leadership was not, as you said, in alignment with what I understood Jesus wants us to be about. And I didn't see like hordes of parishioners rising up and saying, this won't do, we have to make a change. So I wasn't gonna unknow what I knew. I couldn't go sideways, couldn't go this way, wasn't gonna go backwards. So I went forward into the void. And what I did was I established a nonprofit centered around the model of leadership called servant leadership, which has to do with sharing power and control rather than hoarding power and control. So it's a more feminine style of leadership. It's more collaborative. You gather the group around a table. You encourage every person to add her voice or his voice if they want to the conversation. You try to draw ideas out of the quiet people for, if you're starting to form your goals or your vision. And so most of my ordained ministry was devoted to the servant leader organization.
How do you feel like your journey through ministry would have been different had it been through like a servant leadership perspective from the get-go?
Oh, man, it would have been completely different. In fact, I remember after having the Servant Leader Center for a number of years, I just, how sometimes you'll be in the middle of something and you're not really paying attention to how it looks from a distance, but then you wake up and you go, "Oh my gosh, this is what's happening." I just came to one day and realized that I wasn't being harassed, I wasn't being verbally abused, I wasn't being controlled. I was living and working in a healthy environment because we were adamant that we put into practice what we were training our clients to do and to understand about what true leadership means. So that, yeah, it would have been a completely different experience. And I would have probably and I would have stayed in the system and helped to work to, um, make it healthier if there'd been anybody else who wanted to do that. But it was, I saw that it was systemic. When I saw that it was the clergy and the congregations, I thought, "Well, I'm gonna have to do something different."
Speaking of, choosing whether to pursue that route or not, given the systemic misogyny in Christianity and other belief systems, what might motivate a woman to serve in the church and pursue the priesthood, a path unavailable until the 1970s?
It's such an amazing question. I have no answer for that.
Well, we thought we'd ask.
I mean, what would, you know? Um, in, Against the Wind, Bob Seger has this great line about, "I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then." And, that was my situation. I had never experienced this kind of misogyny on this scale before, and my former husband is an Episcopal priest, and I'd been through seminary with him as a seminary spouse, and I had a ball. I had a great time as when he was in seminary. So I did not know that this struggle for power and control was still there and had gone underground and morphed into this guerrilla warfare that we have now. And so, but the minute I put one big toe on the seminary grounds, I realized that that was the case. Um, I think a lot of women have internalized the patriarchy, and in the church, I think they've internalized it. So it doesn't, they, it either doesn't bother them or they have organized their lives and their minds in such a way that they are buffering themselves against acknowledging it and then letting it bother them. And
Mm,
so they're willing to stay in the system. They're willing to follow the masculine path to go up, if you want to use the corporate language, to go up in their career. Whereas I think of what my bishop said, what we should be doing in the clergy is working our way down, to be the
mm,
servant.
yeah.
um, so I guess false gods call people into the clergy. There's narcissism, there's wanting to be in control, there's wanting to be needed, the need to be needed. All of that is part of the human condition. All of that is fine as well, the narcissism part isn't, but that can be dealt with if we're aware of what's pulling us in a particular direction or not, and then choose to do something about that or not. Um, so there's a real lack of self-awareness in the clergy as a group. And so, you know, I don't know what's in other women's minds. I can just tell you, my observation that my guess is that they feel the call and then it's affirmed through the process they go through. And then they choose whether they're going to see the reality of it or not.
Mm,
Although as I say, I don't really have an answer, because when you put it that way, it's like, then who would want to go into it?
right. Yeah, thankfully, I'm sure that there is still women that want to go into it and figure out, how they individually can make a difference and,
Mhm,
not only
mhm.
in the ministry, but just in whatever field that they're,
Yes,
in general, finding a way to make a difference and
sure.
let people know, women can be as much of a force as a man and just as knowledgeable, just as capable, in whatever field that they decide to pursue.
If not more
So
so. Yeah.
with women, deciding to uh be in the trenches, fighting against, whatever system that they're a part of that was probably not created for them in mind within their workplace. You've obviously had a lot of experience with this
Mhm.
yourself. What advice would you give to these women?
Oh, man. Um, Talk to me before you make any big decisions. Read Umbrella before you make too many decisions.
Yeah, there
Uh,
you go.
um, I think I think that the best thing that we can do, the one of the systemic problems with parish ministry is that as a whole, there may be an exception somewhere, but as a whole, there's no HR department. If you're being mistreated by the clergy or by a staff person or whatever it is, um, you have no, you don't have anywhere to go that's safe, and the trust level is not there. Like if I speak to this person, then will he or she blab it to um, everybody on the street,
Mhm,
So I think one thing is to get help and get support from people you trust. If that's some friends outside of the parish, if it's a therapist, um, you've got to have support because it's very isolating and very uh, demeaning. My kids were young when I was in seminary. When I started, they were in the first grade and the seventh grade, and they were my sanity check. I'd go up to that fun house of the campus during the day, and I'd come home to those boys, and they were just my savior. So, and then, it's really interesting because Irene's path mirrored the path that a lot of entrepreneurial women take, which is they find themselves in a system that, as we were saying, wasn't designed with them in mind. And so they find a way to build their own um, path outside that system. Like, let's say they're an accountant and they're working for a firm and it's not working for them. They just, put up their own shingle and
Yep.
run their office the way they want to run it.
mhm.
So not everybody can do that because that takes a certain amount of financial stability, and it takes a lot of courage to go into the unknown like that. But that's what a lot of entrepreneurial women do. They just say, "This is not for me. Life's too short. I'm going to do it a different way and see what happens."
You don't only have to deal with the misbehavior, the biases from men in a male dominated field and workplace in the church. Unfortunately, you also there are women with bad behaviors as well. And it sounds like Irene had to deal with some jealousy.
Mm.
Um, you would think that you would have some camaraderie with your fellow women, but a lot of times that isn't always the case.
Mm-mm. No, no, and that started in seminary. I was ostracized because I don't hate men. I love men. I enjoy men. I've always had men as friends, and um, I didn't dress like a man. I didn't act like a man. I didn't take on any of that. I didn't neuter myself like a lot of people in seminary do, so that you don't exude any kind of sensuality whatsoever because I guess in their pea brain they think that's holier or something. So I was really ostracized by a lot of the women, not all of them, but a lot of them. And as I say, that's a very lonely place to be. Very lonely.
And the patriarchy as a whole, really, it probably wouldn't be completely upheld by just men. It also is upheld, and it continues to persevere because women are upholding it too,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and we understand, an idea of why, because they may be in a position to where, if the man is in control, and they want to be able to, please them, not, but just in a general way of like agreeing with them,
Yeah.
to keep the peace,
Right.
then that means that, in a way that they're perpetuating it. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I think another reason why this is important of what we're doing is giving them a platform to be able to say, hey, it we understand. I think at some point maybe we all have been guilty of it because of societal norm and pressure,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
that it's also okay to say, hey, no, this is not okay, and this is why,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's a way that we can kind of combat, against perpetuating a patriarchal
Absolutely.
structure.
Absolutely. Because to me, it's more than just having women at the table. To me, if we come to the table as women, but we've taken on the patriarchal approach to organizations, to leadership, to being, then we're not bringing the feminine aspect of human nature. I believe that all of us have the masculine and the feminine inside of us. And so what I'm looking for is a balance so that we have the feminine and the masculine present at the table because both have incredible things to offer.
Mhm.
And I think one of the reasons we're in the shape we're in is because we're not rounded like that.
Yeah, being able to have that, equality at the
Mhm.
table
Mhm.
is important.
Exactly. I think that's why at the end of the book, when I shared from my real life, the rector saying to me, "There's no room for you at the table," that just took my breath away because, you know, in this was in like 2018 or 19, in the uh 21st century, you don't say that to anybody. And you certainly, if you value your life, you don't say that to a woman. It was just symbolic. It was not only symbolic because it was real, but it was also the weight of those words was just mind-boggling that he would say that out loud.
Mhm.
And that's one of the episodes I use to help people understand that this is still happening. Because people do like to think that, oh, we've gotten all this taken care of. This is not a problem. We're all set. And I'm talking to 17-year-old young women who are looking to, you know, go to college. This one woman at a book event, 17, and she's studying math and science, and she said it's still there, still there. She said it changes, but it's still there. And so I think that's important too, that we are equipped to help people understand that this is an ongoing situation, that this has not been solved.
Yeah, and one of our first books that we actually read in the book club, one of the, roughly quotes of it is saying like, the advocacy that you do in your life, it there's never gonna be a place where you're like, okay, finally, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, this is
Yeah.
gonna be way past our
Yeah.
lifetimes, probably our children's or grandchildren's lifetime. And
Yeah.
and we have to be able to realize that, like, okay, we're gonna this is a lifetime thing. So
Lifetime
being able
journey.
to take breaks and figure out how to, conserve and
Yeah.
then put forth energy when we need to, and
Yep.
and fight this fight because
Yeah.
it's not, you're right, it's not over. And it, as long as there's, like you said, the human condition where people are fighting for power and
Mhm.
control,
Yeah.
and then this is probably never going to end. But does that mean that we don't fight, for our rights, for women? No, we need to continue to do that regardless.
And then, like you say, also make time for self-care so that
Yes.
we don't
Mhm.
burn out with it because it's, as you say, it's a lifelong journey.
Towards the end of your book, you had revealed a little bit of hesitation and reluctance
Mhm.
You're like, should I say this? Is this gonna come off boastful? Is it kind of gonna sound like this? And I feel like we deal with that in our everyday life.
Mhm.
Women get judged more harshly just based on what they say. Men can say whatever they want, like as you said, we don't have a spot for you here at this table. And well, I mean, he's probably okay for saying that,
Yeah,
but we're more worried about, whose feelings are we going to hurt and disrupting the comfort of other people that we censor ourselves. And,
exactly.
you
Exactly.
know, well, we have the book, you overcame it to write this book. Do you feel that you are under control with that? Or, you're still hesitant in your words?
That's a great question. I'm making progress with it. As I as you know, the last part of Umbrella is autobiographical. I come out from behind the scenes and we just have a talk together, us. And I started having a sense that that's what I wanted to do with my next piece of work was to come out from behind the characters and just share directly with the readers my experiences, how they've shaped me, what nurtures me, what challenges me, what hurts me, what observations I have about the way we do things. And so I'm working on that now, and I have the working title of it is As the Crow Flies. And I'm probably about halfway into it. And I'm just there's no buffer between you and me. It's just us sharing. And there are things that I will share, things I won't share. I went to a writing conference a few years ago, and a poet made this great comment. She said, the author can decide what she wants to keep private. And so if I want to keep something private, if I don't want to, cause harm to a person or cause them to lose respect in the community or whatever, then I still find a way that's still true, but it doesn't go to that level. Um, so, and I'm really enjoying it. If it feels really good to be open and frank and just not behind Irene's skirt,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and who really encouraged me to begin with was, my background is in journalism, and in journalism, we were taught that we don't insert ourselves into the stories. And so when I first started preaching, I would be telling a story about myself, but I would say this happened to a friend. And a group of parishioners got a hold of me at the end of a service one day and they said, we know that's you. Just say it's you. And I treasured that because they were saying, we want to know you. We want that vulnerability. We want to know each other. And so it feels really energizing to me just to be telling you this happened to me. It didn't happen to Irene, it happened to me.
Yeah.
And so, what do you think?
Yeah. Looking forward then to the next book.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. You had already answered our question. How much of Irene's experience was your lived experience? So, um,
100%.
she sounded like such a creative and imaginative little girl, inquisitive and introspective. But having that type of mind, it can be really lonely and isolating. Um, she found comfort in being in the normal category as per her shampoo bottle, which, I mean, the little girl in me relates to that because it's like, I'm normal. See, the bottle
See?
said so. I don't know if you meant it that way, but I picked
Yeah.
up on it
Like,
like that.
see, there's nothing wrong with me. Yeah. Yeah, 'cause, in the new book, I share this vignette that when I was growing up, the grown-ups in my family would call me Sarah Bernhardt, and y'all are too young to know who that was, but she was a French actress, and she was known for being melodramatic and loud and boisterous and all this kind of stuff. So what they were saying to me was that I was melodramatic, that I was overreacting, that I was too sensitive, too defensive, and all those kinds of things. And so, you're right, I had not put what you're talking about together, but you're right that when you are sensitive and when you are imaginative and these kinds of things, it can bring on some caustic comments from outside. And so I think it's so insightful what you're bringing up. I think that maybe she did look at that Breck shampoo normal and think, well, no, I'm okay. There's nothing wrong, inherently wrong with my nature. It's really fun when you all make connections that I didn't see. That's one of the things I really love about hearing readers talk about their experience, because there's so much there that you all see that I didn't see.
I picked that out. I was like, "Oh, that was pretty clever," um, but on that being lonely and not feeling like you really belong or fit in anywhere, I was gonna ask you if you had a ladybug in real life,
I did.
um,
I did.
that the story was heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still not over that. And I will say that I created Uncle Giles to be the person who perpetrated those behaviors that were so ghastly. Those behaviors did take place in my own family, but I was preserving the privacy of of the source. But yeah, I had her. I loved her so much. I came home probably from school, and she just wasn't there anymore because they had given her away without telling me. And I was probably in grammar school or maybe junior high, and I'm not over it. I'll never get over that.
And I feel like that was just the start of events that happened to you that were out of your control, and people were making decisions for you without even considering your input first.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think you're absolutely right. It's a bummer.
The umbrella is a recurring symbol throughout the novel. This theme is introduced when Irene borrows an umbrella before her interview at the cathedral, which turns out to be a large and ostentatious man's umbrella. After witnessing the behavior from her boss during the interview, the umbrella seemed to symbolize the necessity of existing and navigating in a man's world.
You got
Uh,
it. That's it.
a little bit later, Irene is walking with her friend and she sees a group of girls with their petite, whimsical ladybug umbrellas. And she was like, I would need to get one of those myself. And she's like, that is so you. And makes perfect sense. But at that time, the umbrella is, maybe some nostalgia. Maybe it's belonging with the girls together. It's a happier moment.
Yes.
It appears again after Irene has an epiphany, a self realization. She's talking about her dream with Marla, and it's raining outside. She leaves. She feels good. She feels lighter and at peace with herself. And she opens the umbrella, and it's kind of encompassing and enveloping her, and she just has that moment of clarity.
Mhm.
But I didn't know if the umbrella held specific meanings or was it left for open for interpretation for the
Is
reader.
anything I write is open to interpretation because I want it's not what it's not about me, it's about you and your experience. So we do share the interpretation of the first appearance of the umbrella, that she's trying to navigate a system that was built for men and not for women. And that umbrella represents that. Um, and then I really resonate with your with your understanding of the child's umbrella that was more fun. In a book signing event, some of the people talked about how she was connecting with her little girl, her joy, her I can do what I want to because I'm me, so I can do this if I want to do this. And then others have interpreted the umbrella as a shelter, like where am I going to find shelter and protection in the system? And you were talking about the shelter when she finally left. I I guess I must have been taught this 1,000 years ago, but I really like the three the to if to have a symbol or something that's of note at the beginning and then toward the middle and then at the end, because I think it ties the piece of work together. So that was my main purpose in having those other umbrellas. I wanted to end with where we began, but with a transformation of that umbrella, from the first one. But I love hearing what people bring to that, uh, interpretation.
And do you feel like, Uncle Giles, like what Irene had experienced in the book from like when she was small, do you feel like that was kind of like your way of portraying like how she kind of almost became primed for the patriarchy and like the patriarchal structure even before ministry?
My work here is done. You absolutely got it. You absolutely got it. That's what I discovered when I got into uh, got into working as a priest and realized what the system was like. Remember how I described her home as having so much wood in it, outside and inside, and then the first church that she went to um, had all that wood
Mhm.
and it was home, and then she was being mistreated at a clergy gathering, and she looked up at the ceiling, which was wooden, and she felt a familiarity. So I was trying to say, yeah, she grew up in that system, so she was she was ready and primed, as you say, for uh, going into another system that mirrored it.
Mm.
Yep, you got it, absolutely. So I used the wood to try to help link the 3.
I think that was a good way to be able to connect.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm, because that's the way it often happens, we were brought up in a particular environment, and we learn to navigate that as best we can as children, and then if we're not aware of what that environment was like, or we're not aware of how we're navigating it, it's so easy to then step into exactly the same thing, just in a different setting,
Mhm.
different channel, different different sofa, but it's the same set of dynamics. And, like, often people will marry a particular person who feels familiar. It may or may not be the healthiest person to
Mhm.
marry because he or she may be mirroring what we grew up with, and that can be good, that can not be healthy to perpetuate that pattern.
Mm.
So, yeah, you got it. You absolutely got it. And, a lot of, people go into the so-called caring professions because they are looking for healing for themselves. So that's a challenge that I think all of us have when we go into these, whether it's social work or counseling or the clergy, whatever it is um, that's a caring profession, medical, is to really examine ourselves and see, okay, so are we looking for healing? And if we are, again, that's part of the human condition. That is fine. It's just that we don't allow our need to be behind the steering wheel, because then we allow ourselves to be led into behaviors and decisions that may or may not be beneficial to ourselves or to others.
And I think it's easy to step into familiarity, but it's
Hmm.
hard to buck back against familiarity.
Yes. Yep. How did you all get, what drew you all into forming your book club? And did you all know each other ahead of time and you were talking about these kinds of things? Tell me sort of your origin story.
We've known each other for maybe over 20 years
Mhm.
now.
Oh,
We went
neat.
to school together, and in light of recent political events and the election, things like that, we kind of came together and we were on the same wavelength. Abby started the book club and asked me to join, and it kind of grew from there.
That's great. See, that's exactly what we were talking about, that we all have our way of engaging in the resistance. We all do. And this is a very powerful way that you all have found to do it. Very powerful. I mean, when you sent me the questions and I saw your question about how misogyny is prevalent in religious institutions, I was like, yeah, these are my people. It's like, wow. And now that I found you, I don't want to let you go. I want to stay in contact with you guys because I really respect what you're doing, and we are speaking the same language, and it takes some of the angst out of it for me to know that there are other people who see it and are working diligently to do something about it. It's very comforting. So, and I say you're stuck with me now. So
But it's truly been a pleasure. Thank you so
thank
much
you
for
so
spending
much.
time with us this evening.
Yes, you are very kind, very gracious to allow us your time. And reading through the acknowledgments and in your other books as well, I'm like, she's just so gracious and so humble.
Thank you.
And you're thanking everybody that had anything to do with, helping you reach your goal. And I really think there needs to be more of that in this world.
Gratitude.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it was wonderful. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. It was just great. And thank you for the incredible, important work you're doing and the spirit with which you're doing it in. And I'll look forward to continuing this journey with you.